alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is V S Holmes. Hello, V.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's always great to have guests, especially guests who write fantasy, as I'm a big time, I'm not a big time fantasy author, but I like to write fantasy a lot. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite genres. It's tied.
Ooh, what's your other favorite genre?
Sci-fi.
Oh, so, okay. So we're pretty similar in that regard, actually. Yeah. They're buddies. They're
yes.
Cousins is probably a better way to put it because yeah. Anyway,
depends on you.
Yeah, exactly. It depends. And so tell readers a little bit about yourself, listeners, I guess, and I mean, hopefully we got some readers out there. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do and your books. And so on.
So I'm a sci-fi fantasy author. My day job is as an archaeologist, and I try and focus on disabled and queer representation in my books, and advocacy, that sort of things. Because I'm part of both of those communities myself. So
cool.
That's me.
Oh, what's the title of your series? It's on the tip of my tongue.
The fantasy series is the Blood of Titans world, and the sci-fi series is the Nell Bentley books. So the Blood of Titans just finished and released the 4th book on the 27th, so that's super exciting. And I'm in the process of finishing the 4th book in the sci-fi series as well. I guess 4 is a good number this year.
Cool, yeah, 4. That's and here I am. I just finished my first sequel in a long time earlier in the month. I didn't finish it. I finished the rough draft.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is always very exciting. And today, the day we're recording this, I finished a novella as well, and that was only like 2 weeks later. So I'm pretty pleased with my speed at this point.
Yeah.
I've been going pretty well, but yeah. I'm very bad at writing series, right? Like I'm very bad about trying to stay in the series. I always bounce around, so that's why it takes me so long to finish finishing the next book in each one.
Well, I think I kind of alternate because that's the great thing about having two, at least for me, fairly distinct genres. My voice is very different between the two, so I get to bounce between them. And this most recent book was the first thing I'd finished in. I guess a year, but it felt like a decade.
Oh boy, tell me the truth. I mean, you can say that again. Let me put it that way. That is exactly how I felt because it took me a year to write. It took me about 10 months to write this one rough draft. I'm like, ugh, how could it take so long? Well, it takes that long. Let me just clue you in because my listeners will know this, but if they've been listening for a few months, but I threw out 80,000 words in this book at the start of May.
Wow.
Or was it
good for
April?
You. That's hard.
And then I wrote it, and that was basically all I had, and I started over. Mm-hmm. It was insane. It was like, oh man, I can't believe I did that. The book, that's probably the most words I've ever put into a book. And it's not the longest book I have now because, of course, half of them are gone.
Right. Oh man, yeah, that's so scary. I'm an overwriter, so I'll go back in and do a slash and burn, but it's never easy. It's very cathartic, I think. Like once I'm mid stride, I'm like, all right, this is great. But the first few, it's like, but I definitely have a document where I throw all the.
Oh yeah, I don't delete anything. I just save it. I just move it to a different folder in the Scrivener file or in the computer or whatever. But I guess I do delete little things, right? Because I'm not going to version every time I delete a sentence or whatever. Right. But you get the idea. My favorite thing about that is what you said there was it gets easier basically, like that ridiculous like that this line that doesn't ever really get said, I'm pretty sure, in the beginning of the James Bond movie Casino Royale, which is kind of I like that book a lot. But he's like, oh yeah, it gets easier to kill people. It gets easier to kill your darlings too, it turns out. To kill the sentences.
I think of it as like a pain threshold. So like each new project, you're starting with a new pain threshold, and you just see how far you can take it.
Oh, I hear that.
That probably says a lot about what we write. That those are our analogies, killing in pain.
Well, I mean, sometimes you're writing a book where people jump onto giants and cut them into pieces. Whatever.
Yes.
Which I'm not sure what actually happens in the Blood of Titans, but that was the book I was writing today.
Well, it's more like, I mean, yes, it's that, but they are the monsters. They are the giants.
The main characters are the giants? Oh, that's so
just
cool.
Metaphorically.
Oh, okay. I was talking about literally like a skyscraper tall humanoid because I'm a goof.
Oh. That's exciting too, though.
It's a different kind. It's the Shadow of the Colossus kind of thing, like that kind of nonsense.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm sort of excited about, kind of closing the door on this chapter of this series, because I'm really excited to work in a world that has a lot more magic, because it's fairly low fantasy when it comes to the magic, and so I just want to go stops out, like really play with some magic systems in a new way.
Oh, so are you starting a new series next year then?
I'm starting.
Or is it just a new stage of the same series?
Both.
Okay.
I can never have like one project, but I'm revisiting the world, sort of about 10 years later, and kind of delving into a little bit more of some background characters that I wanted to explore, and the world itself is a bit more flintlock fantasy. It gets more industrial.
Okay.
Which I'm also excited about, because I love trains. and I'm also working on something that's, so far it's not a series. Ooh. Everything I've said that about has turned into a series, though, so we'll see.
So tentatively not a series.
Tentatively not a series, and it's completely different from anything I've ever done, and I'm very excited about it. There's lots of death and sex and feelings and necromancy, so...
I was saying, like, oh, it sounds like, not like, I mean, the death, except for the death part, and actually, except for a lot of that stuff, it sounds like the stuff I like to read, honestly, not the stuff I write so much. I'm a little more, tame than that when I read, but yeah. But no, when I write, when I read, I like basically anything. Cut loose.
I'll have to slide this into your inbox at some point once it is fit for eyes.
Yes. Anyway, we should probably have kept that out of the show. But anyway, that's how the show rolls. You could have kept that one on the down low, kept behind the scenes. Secret book trading, whatever. Well, now it's out in public, whatever.
Well, we can say, if people with other people want to see it, they can get in contact with me.
Oh, cool. Yeah, now it's
an open deal.
Well, nice. Yeah. So you'll find out where to reach V S Holmes at the end of this podcast. I think. That's generally what we do at the end of the show. So, So V, you have your sci-fi series as well, but you're an independent author then, or a small press author? I'm sorry, I don't do research for this. Yeah. Oh, indie, great. Okay, so am I. I just was curious, because lazy researcher here.
Well, I use like a small press name for all of my work, just for the legal ease of things, taxes, et cetera.
Smart.
But yeah, no, it's all indie.
Well, I mean, I kind of guessed that when you said you'd finished the book and now it's out. It's like, yeah, that's not a traditional publishing approach.
No, 2 years later.
Yeah, exactly. Like we got to be able to get a special episode coming up this next week, and this book is like, well, it took like 4 years to get the book out. Like, oof. That sounds so tough. I'm like, dude, that's terrible. It's so slow. Anyway, people do what they do, but it scares me to think of a book coming out after 4 years of effort and finally one book releases.
Well, especially because especially for series, you have to go back and check out what the heck you said in the past book, and I would cringe having to go that far back in like what my skill set was.
Oh boy.
Okay, 4 years ago I was writing what?
What? Oh no. I definitely hear you on that. Though it is funny because actually one of my more successful books is I wrote it when I was like 19. It's very weird.
Wow.
It's like 10 years old, but when I published it.
Well, I think sometimes you listen to the outer voices a little bit too much.
Yeah.
After a certain point, and you finding that balance,
Yeah. Has that ever happened to you then? I mean, not to pry or anything, obviously. It's yeah.
Definitely. I wouldn't say like one particular person. I did have one interaction with an editor who ended up, I didn't end up hiring them. But that was the first point where I actually really pushed back against advice that just wasn't for my genre, wasn't for my age range. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I don't have to listen to all these outer voices. And I realized sort of how much I had incorporated them. Luckily, it was to a smaller degree. I think it was more with what you can and can't write, as opposed to like how you can and can't write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a powerful realization to come to, and it took me a long time to do it. Like when I wrote the book I was just telling you about, I wrote this book back when I was 19, so it's now called Orphanage, and it's the first book of a little series that hopefully will be coming out more later this year. But my brain is weird, so who knows? And I don't have pre-orders, so no one can hold me to that. But
that's the wisest choice you've made.
It wasn't wise. It wasn't actually wise. That was also hard-won wisdom because I lost my pre-orders last year because I delayed.
Oh, that sucks.
On Amazon. So anyway, it's okay. It's just for 1 year. So I'm almost back to being able to toy with that again if I want. But this book was the last book I wrote before I became an English major. I was in college, but I had not declared my major yet. Declared my major, and I went through a drought of like 5 years. It was really hard for me to write a book because I was listening to all these English teachers talking about stuff, and it really did influence what I was writing a lot.
Yeah,
and I just because I liked them, I wanted to be friends with them, I wanted them to like my work, and it just wasn't the same thing because I write sci-fi and fantasy. They don't want that. They don't care about that stuff.
No, that's not anything like what they write.
Exactly.
I'm just so grateful that I took 2 creative writing classes in college, and then for the most part, I was all hard sciences, and I think I probably would have gone crazy if I hadn't done that. Just because writing was what was my like palate cleanser, and if I was all creativity, especially that kind of stifled creativity, just oof.
I don't necessarily know about stifled, but misdirected is more how I'd put it. Because I just wanted, like, I was looking at the wrong direction. They weren't telling me not to write. In fact, they were very encouraging. I don't want to make them sound like they were bad or anything, because they were just trying to teach me to write a different kind of thing, and so that influenced me pretty in a way that wasn't working for me.
Yeah.
And the book I did finish at that point was one of my longer books at the time, and it's not fixable. It's beyond any help. Just like the 80,000 words I threw out earlier this year, though, so I can't really blame the English majors too much for that. The English professors too much for that one, because it's been a while.
Yeah.
But the key thing, but actually, with the problem with both those books, and I want to ask if you can speak to about this because this is my show, but I don't need to babble the whole time, obviously. I'm pretty bad about that right now. Can you tell I've been losing sleep anyway?
I think we're all at that point.
Oh
like,
boy,
either we're losing sleep or just losing normal sanity. I don't know.
Yeah, sanity points lost. No kidding. So this latest book and the other one, they were basically the reason I kind of would throw either of them out. I'd throw them both out now. The huge chunk of Shadow Prince that I wrote, and which is it'll be coming out I think at the end of July, so pretty soon here.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, I'm happy about it. It's actually, I was just editing the first chapter. So good, but that's a tangent. Maybe we'll come back to it later.
It's good when you can like your own stuff.
I adore that first chapter.
Yeah.
But the reason I threw them out is because they were just the wrong book. It's not like the story was even necessarily all that bad. It was just a book for a different person that I didn't particularly like. I mean, when I wrote Gatewood Hall back in college, that was the book. That was this huge, big book that never really worked. And I don't think it could work because it was the one that I wrote to try to please myself, the fantasy fan, and also the English professors. It's just not really doable.
Yeah, that's...
And it was a tall order for somebody who had only written 4 or 5 books back then. Anyway. And even then, it's just about impossible to write a book that's fun and literature and fantasy and accessible all at the same time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I mean, there's fun literature out there. I mean, I can attest to that, but oof, it's not an easy task. That's why you have to respect the people who write like magical realism and stuff so much. At least I do. I guess I shouldn't say you have to. People can.
Really cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a long way of me saying, do you ever have you ever written a book that didn't work? I guess. I mean, it didn't like you like, oh, I just can't do it. I can't fix this. Or is that no? Good for you.
I mean,
I'm happy to hear that.
Yes. I wouldn't say I've done it since I've been professional.
Of course. Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah.
I have a lot of trunked things that we just won't speak about.
Oh, don't we all though?
But I've definitely the most recent 2 books in my fantasy series, which are Madness and Gods and Blood and Mercy, those are almost unrecognizable from the first iteration. I mean, the main character has the same name, and who like his relationship to some of the previous characters is still roughly the same, but like half the people's genders are swapped. There's like, it's completely different, and his entire arc ends up the opposite of where it did originally.
Ooh, interesting.
And yeah, that it was pretty much a full rewrite. And so that, I think that's the closest I've come to simply saying this isn't working. I think the core of what I really wanted to say and stripped away everything that I felt like I was supposed to be saying.
Oh, that's so cool. I love how you just put that. That's like, you just take out all the stuff that doesn't work, or that's not what you want, and it leaves you with what you do want. That's actually advice there, because I mean, you didn't phrase it like advice, but you know what I mean? That's a great point. People should be taking notes. Anyway, just for what you say. So not many notes probably, because I'm overrunning this conversation. Anyway.
Well, So I got that idea sort of from my own advice. It was actually and I say this on a lot of interviews, which is sort of silly, but
oh well.
I saw a quote by Dolly Parton, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it's essentially find out who you are and then do it on purpose. And I've sort of internalized that with branding, and also just like who I want to be in my personal life as well. But I sort of try and attach that advice to each new project. So like, find out what the heck is the point, and then do it on purpose. And that, I think, really helped me lean into the stories I wanted to tell and the style in which I wanted to tell them in a way that I sort of hadn't given myself permission to do so before, I guess. I don't know.
No, it sounds like you're onto something there. I really like that. Because it's like one of those things about because for a while there I was kind of obsessed with writing advice. Like, I'd listen to all the podcasts about writing and all that stuff. I'd read a bunch of books about writing. I was so into writing craft for maybe 15 years that I didn't come close to my capacity of being able to write. Right? I could have written a lot more books if I just stopped paying attention to these podcasts and just gone and written more.
Yeah. And it's hard. There's so much advice out there, and everyone's process is different.
Exactly. That's where I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't really. I mean, I think it's good to try new things and to see what you can add to your toolkit. Like I just took a course on outlining, like this really in-depth type of outlining, and I'm an outliner, and I have pretty much always outlined to some extent, and this was a totally new way of doing it, and it was. I think in some ways it was really valuable, and I'll take some things from it, and probably half of the things I will not use again in my next work in progress. But I'm still taking classes and trying to educate myself. But I also know it's like sometimes it's not going to work.
Well, I didn't want to make it sound like I was casting away all those podcasts and stuff, but more like I just have to know what's going to work. Like you were talking about, you're going to discard some of this stuff. Not all of it's for you. Not all of it's for me. I mean, I've gotten a lot out of outlining ideas, even though I don't outline, basically at all anymore. This latest book, it was a novella I just finished today. I didn't outline any of it until like the last few chapters, and then I threw out the entire outline for that too. Before I was done, I was like, well, that didn't look at anything like how I actually wrote it. So, it's just
Yeah.
The key for me is, if I'm going to write an outline, is to not be beholden to it. I mean,
Right.
I think that's true for a lot of people, though.
Yeah, mine's definitely like my first outline, the way I typically outline, not in this new sort of fangled way. This new fangled way.
Oh, this new stuff, guys.
over here.
Get off my lawn with your new outlining.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go through and I'll have an outline when I just have the first idea of the story, and then after my first draft, I'll go back through and rewrite the outline based on, like you said, how it actually came out. And then at the very end of the book, when it's pretty much ready for line editing, I will go back through and really redo the outline with my final read through to be like, did I actually nail everything I was supposed to? Do I have all my obligatory scenes? Does everything get paid off? Probably not. Have to go fix it.
Okay.
So,
That sounds good, actually, because outlining to edit makes more sense to me. I don't do it on the way through, but I could see actually doing something like that eventually. Though I actually do find editing that way could slow me down too, because I'm just not my style. Obviously, different strokes for different folks.
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. So, I think. Let me see. I think that one of the key things I've learned about just throw away the stuff that doesn't work is just is also embrace the stuff that you really want to do, which is something I did kind of instinctively when I was younger, and then I kind of suppressed it for 5 or 6 years too. It was very weird.
Yeah.
I think it's because I was handing more stuff off to. Yeah, I think it was because I was handing stuff off to writing groups for a long time, and then I was worried what they'd say about some of the material I was going to give them. And so I toned everything down, and that's really bad as far as creating a fun story or a good story that I'm going to enjoy, and it's going to drive me,
Yeah. I've just recently sort of been able to get back in contact, so to speak, with that side of me that really wanted to do the fun stuff, that wasn't ashamed or wasn't nervous, and it's been really fun. Like my kind of sandbox secret project thing that's totally different. That has been really fun for me because I haven't shown it to anyone. It took me months to tell even my closest critique partner and my spouse what the rough plot line was.
Wow.
Because I wasn't ready. I wanted it to really, really be what I wanted it to be. And usually I'm constantly sharing well, I was sort of thinking this, or I was sort of thinking that, and then I had this idea, and probably, make people crazy. But this was the first time where it's I'm going to keep this to myself until I'm certain, because it feels so new and so raw in a lot of ways. And I don't know, I'm always amazed at how different every single book is too. Not just because we're progressing as writers, but I feel like every book is a completely different project.
Oh yeah, that also rings very true to me. I think when I tackle a book, it feels different each time. It's beginning to. Sometimes they're a little bit the same. Honestly.
Yeah.
In a series, they tend to be a little more similar, but there's always this different twist to it, right? And I think that's really cool. It's one of the reasons I like writing so much, honestly.
Yeah.
Did you get into writing for a particular vibe or reason, do you think? Or is it just you just love the craft, stuff like that?
I feel like every author says this, and I feel like I also roll my eyes most of the time, but I'm going to roll my eyes at myself.
Go for it.
I have written since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is my mom is a writer. She was an editor for years, which was, you think it's a good thing in high school to have your parent edit your paper, but oh my God, I think it's a miracle her relationship survived. And so I was sort of, part of the literary thing going on with my childhood, and both my parents read to me a lot. And so stories were always a thing. But I think really for me, and part of why I'm so into science too, is I'm always wondering okay, so what if, and how does this work, and what's next, and how does this, fit together with this other thing? And, that writing and I guess all forms of creative work are kind of just those questions turned inwards in some ways, turned into our own imagination, and then just having the forethought to document it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I'm looking at the time, and I think we should get to the reading section. Sorry for the abrupt swerve here. That is interesting enough.
No, you're fine.
So what have you been reading lately, V?
Well, I just finished, well, I guess it was about a couple weeks ago. I just finished Catherine Hudson's Sleepwater Static. Awesome.
Oh, big fan of Catherine here on the show, by the way.
Oh, she's wonderful. We actually published our first books right around the same time, and our careers have been paralleling each other. And it's just really fun to read her work and to just see how she's doing. So that, and then I also read, which is sort of off brand for me. I read a lesbian retelling / inspired by Pride and Prejudice book, which was awesome. And that was Lucas by Elna Holst. And I just really love that. I love fan fiction, and this felt like really well done queer fan fiction of Jane Austen. And yeah, that's also sort of my bag. So.
Neat.
Yeah.
Cool. So as I actually did think of something that I have been reading lately, and it's actually Let's Get Digital, the 4th edition by David Gaughran. And it's a free ebook, so it's pretty good. I mean, good to brush up on your self-publishing skills if you haven't. I'm still pretty, like, I started self-publishing in 2015 technically, but I'm still pretty bad at it. So and Gaughran's advice really strikes me as being really useful. So I read this whole book. I just finished it today, or was it yesterday? I don't know. Time. It's a funny thing.
Time.
What is time? But and it's free. You can't beat that price for a self-published book. So. A book about publishing at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you for being on the show, V. It's been great.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for asking such awesome questions. It's really fun to have a good conversation.
Isn't it, though? That's what I like about this podcast. If I do have to say so myself. I didn't have to, though, because you said it already. So, V, where can people find your work online?
So you can check out my website, which is vsholmes.com. And I have actually 2 short stories on there. If you want to see if my writing's for you, you can download either of them or both for free. One's sci-fi, one's fantasy, so you can do that. And my books are available on Amazon and every other digital store. You can also buy paperbacks through your local bookstore and also through Amazon, but local bookstores are the best. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter as VS_Holmes and author VS Holmes on Facebook. So you can check out all of those. And I also have a podcast, which is Author Interviews, if people are so inclined. A little bit more structured, I'd say. But
wow, it's hard. It's not hard to be a little more structured.
Amphibianpress.online.
Oh, sorry. Say that again. I was talking over you. Say the address again.
No, you're fine. It's podcast.amphibianpress.online.
Cool. Well, it's been great to have you. And as for me, you can find my books on Amazon.com. I've got Orphanage out by the end of the month. Shadow Prince should hopefully be out. And I've got my secret book that involves certain giant monsters fighting people in space. And that isn't going to be out for a while yet, but whatever. Instead, look for Demon Scroll. That's the first book. You'll want to read that before you get to Shadow Prince. So that's epic fantasy for those who enjoy that kind of thing. Yeah. And so thanks for listening, everybody. Oh, you will be? Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll talk about that other book later. Anyway, no, we talked about it plenty on the show, actually. So thanks for listening, everybody. And I'll stop hamming it up. So take it easy. Have a good week.
That tears it.